Johnny Carson presided over The Tonight Show for 30 years, long enough to witness every imaginable kind of guest, brilliant, bizarre, boring, and occasionally spectacularly drunk. Carson himself, with his sharp timing and famously raised eyebrow, knew how to turn even a disastrous interview into unforgettable television. Over the decades, a handful of guests stood out, not just for their star power, but for the way they appeared on stage, clearly. These moments became part of Carson lore, sometimes whispered among fans, sometimes replayed in anniversary specials, always proving that live TV in his era carried a thrilling unpredictability. One of the most talked about examples was Dean Martin, who embraced a public persona built around constant drinking. Whether or not Martin was actually intoxicated on camera remains debated. Many insist his signature slurred charm was more performance than reality, but there are episodes where he unmistakably leaned into the drunken act. When he shuffled onto Carson's stage with a drink in hand, giggled through Carson's questions, or feigned confusion about what show he was even on, Johnny played the perfect counterbalance. Carson let Martin ramble, teased him gently, and coaxed him into improvised gags. Martin's drunk appearances became so iconic that people still ask whether they were real or part of the Rat Pack mythology. Whatever the truth, Carson knew he had comic gold and let it roll. Another legendary moment came courtesy of Orson Welles, the brilliant but mercurial filmmaker. Welles, known for enjoying good food, fine cigars, and an extravagant amount of wine, occasionally arrived on Carson's set looking as though he had sampled the minibar a little too liberally beforehand. In one memorable appearance, he launched into meandering philosophical monologues that left Carson blinking into the camera, half amused and half. Welles spoke in thunderous tones about magic, cinema, and metaphysics, all while Johnny gently steered him back toward something the audience could understand. Even when clearly tipsy, Welles possessed charisma so grand that Carson mostly let him hold court, occasionally cutting in with a perfectly timed quip that brought the house down. But no story of drunk guests would be complete without mentioning John Cassavetes, the fiercely passionate actor and filmmaker who appeared with Carson multiple times. Cassavetes sometimes arrived in a state that can only be described as exuberantly loose. On one appearance with his friends Peter Falk and Ben Gazzara, Cassavetes looked visibly buzzed and behaved like a man who had pre-gamed in the green room. He laughed too loudly, grabbed at the microphone, slid from topic to topic, and at one point seemed on the verge of hugging Carson whether Johnny liked it or not. Carson, knowing Cassavetes' unpredictable energy, kept the conversation playful. His ability to keep the tone friendly while preventing the interview from completely derailing showed his mastery as a host. Another oft-recounted incident involved whose vibrant personality and rapid-fire speech already made her a whirlwind guest, even while sober. On one of her more chaotic visits, she appeared exceptionally high-spirited, dancing, talking over Carson, and delivering jokes at a pace that suggested she had enjoyed a cocktail or two before the show. Carson reacted with a delightful blend of mock alarm and genuine amusement, leaning back in his chair as if bracing for impact. Her exuberance created one of those unpredictable, infectious segments that could only happen on his show. An especially infamous moment came when Oliver Reed, the notoriously hard-drinking British actor, sat down with Carson. Reed was known for consuming heroic amounts of alcohol and seemed to treat talk show appearances as opportunities to continue the party. On Carson's couch, he appeared flushed, sweaty, boisterous, and completely incapable of sticking to a single topic. Carson, unflappable as ever, alternated between teasing Reed and letting him spin out his wild stories. The audience roared, and Carson's subtle glances to the camera confirmed that he knew exactly how out of control the segment had become. Still, perhaps the most chaotic moment occurred during the appearance of Ed McMahon, Carson's sidekick, when he wasn't scheduled as a formal guest. McMahon, who openly joked about his fondness for Budweiser, occasionally wandered onto the set after a long night. Carson would raise an eyebrow as McMahon's booming laugh came a split second too late or his story stretched into rambling territory. Because the two men had such deep chemistry, the audience loved these moments. Watching Carson gently roast McMahon for being overly refreshed became part of the show's charm. Through all these episodes, Johnny Carson's brilliance was not just in hosting but in handling the unpredictable. A drunk guest could have derailed a lesser show. Carson turned it into comedy, never mean, always quick, always in control. His timing, patience, and ability to redirect chaos made these moments legendary. The drunken appearances weren't merely stumbles. They were the kinds of unscripted treasures that live TV rarely produces anymore. The kind of moments only Johnny Carson could transform into lasting entertainment.